So if you could be here around 9, that would be great. Okay?
Well, listen here.
Hello, and welcome to 90 Day Fiancé UK. I'm Mr. O, and today, Miss H and I will be discussing Season 11, Episode 3 of 90 Day Fiancé. In this episode, Mahdi spreads his deadpan humor all over New Orleans, Mark takes Mina to a gas station and a bare furniture store, Matt and Amadi leave their kids in the dust to go hook up with Ani, and Gregory's living situation isn't exactly what Joan had in mind. Alright, thanks for listening, stay safe, and enjoy!
Hello, Mr. O.
Hello, Miss H.
How are you today?
Busy.
Yes.
This is March, starts my super busy season, and all of a sudden
March
it's like,
Madness.
for me, it is. It's all of a sudden the 10-hour, 11-hour days that I have to work start all through March and April.
Right.
Get to the ease off point. So things are pretty crazy with me right now.
Yes, so we hope that you will forgive us if occasionally in the next few months we may release a day later than we typically do. We kind of have given ourselves a little bit of grace. I think we started, 6 months ago maybe. We said, okay, we're not going to kill ourselves to try release on a Monday, even though we'll make every attempt to. But, if lives get in the way, as long as we get it by Wednesday,
right.
I think we've given ourselves that at least. So. Yeah. Well, speaking of madness, or maybe people just have names that sound like madness, let's start off with Steve and Maddie. So the morning after doesn't seem any more lighthearted because Maddie notes that Stevie has to stay healthy because it's too expensive to see a doctor. So Maddie says that the night was more relaxed than the previous time they spent together, and he claims that he's a professional now, which I'm assuming is his way of talking about in bed without really trying to draw explicit attention to it.
Which I appreciate, because sometimes it's a very much like, I'm professional at touching her privates. I'm like, we didn't need that part,
Stop.
man. Let's stop.
Stop while you're ahead.
Yeah.
So Stevie asks him about his statement about going back to his country the night before, and Maddie says that he said it without much thought, and he apologizes if it made her feel bad. He tells her he chose her, and she's more important than his parents. Maddie says he's never been away from his parents, and he misses them, so that's maybe what motivated him to make that comment about going back. Stevie feels pressure for having to fill the void of his family as she cries. Maddie tries a beignet, and he says that he's never had anything like this. He kind of hopes that not all American food is like that, or he says that he knows he will be fat. Maddie is amazed at all the sights in New Orleans, especially the street performers and the skimpy clothes on mannequins. And Maddie says it feels weird because singing and dancing would basically get you arrested in Iran. He says that you can't even have dogs on a leash because their place is at home, which, oh my gosh, could you even imagine Americans living like that?
But I think it's funny that we'll get to it, we had two foreigners thinking very different things about where dogs belong. Right.
So Maddie doesn't want to speak freely because he doesn't want his family to be persecuted. So that's probably the reason why he wasn't so explicit about things. And Maddie says that everything looks more colorful in the U.S. and feels more free there. So what do you think of Maddie's take on U.S. life?
Oh man, I thought it was hilarious. I got a real kick out of his very dry. I love the dry humor, right? He is telling jokes, but just that very dry, very flat delivery really it tickles me. Yes, everything down from his I know one thing about America, and it's that no one can afford to get sick.
Right.
And it's one of those things he's like, I feel like so much of his thing was just like, oh, I understand now. Like the beignet thing, right? He's like, oh, these Americans are all fat. Eat one bite of American food. It's like, oh, yeah, I get it now.
Yeah, this is really good. I guess I'm going to be fat now.
Yeah, so I hope it isn't. But yeah, just his dry reaction to everything was a highlight to me. I really like this guy so far.
Right. No, I appreciate that too, because I think what the kind of humor that you're kind of talking about is that kind of more deadpan delivery. But I when people are subtly comical, like not in a very like obvious like, hey everyone, I'm telling a joke. It's like
Right.
I'm just going to deliver the joke like a normal conversation, and if you happen to be picking up on it, good for you. So that's what I appreciate about Maddie's sense of humor here. But what I think is really interesting about his whole take on New Orleans being like more colorful, I don't even think it's specific to like the US, right? I think there's parts of the US that are like deserty, and to me it kind of feels like brown and neutral there too. So I don't think this is specific to
the US contains multitudes. I remember one time when I was like in high school. Oh man, I was like a kid. My grandfather had a distant cousin or something visit from Arizona. Mm-hmm. And this guy's old man at the time, lived in Arizona his whole life, literally took leaves back on the plane just to be like, these things were everywhere. Like everywhere you looked, it was like green. Look at how green this leaf is. So yes, there is definitely drab brown places in the U.S. as well.
Right. Because I'm going to say my parents live in a desert now, and I kind of grew up in a desert, arguably. And so, yeah, I think that's why I don't really like brown. I was just really surrounded by a lot of brown tone, earth tones. So I really appreciate my blues and greens now.
Yeah, that's fair too. Because the other story is that when my mom went to Vegas for the first time, she came back and I'm like, "What'd you think?" She was like, "Too brown."
Yeah,
didn't like it.
Yeah, there's something about it. And I mean, I get that it's natural, like earth tones are natural, but I don't know. I just don't feel inspired by that. So I'm with you, Maddie, about, being amongst color.
Yeah. Right? Well, and New Orleans is like that. It's interesting because we haven't seen this particular thing in a while. I think one of the early seasons we had, like maybe the first or second season, we had somebody from like Russia, and her first experience was like in New York, like they got out of the, Port Authority bus terminal or something. And it was like, oh God, there's so much going on. Right.
Yeah.
And New Orleans is a clearly a different vibe than New York City, but it's a lot going on vibe. Right. Yeah. And so many times they lean into like, Juan of the, nope, we're going to bring him to America and take him to bumfuck nowhere, and there's nothing going on, and we're going to see how bored these people get. Like, instead of just like, ooh, wow, this is very America. I was not ready for this much America to be shoved in my face right away.
Well, I think they're going to get there, right? Because Stevie does not live in New Orleans. So this is just a pit stop on the way to whatever.
She lives in Hattiesburg, which is, it's a college town, so I don't think it's going to be quite as bad as Wyoming or as we'll see, New Hampshire. Gosh.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So since I mentioned, people being upset with living in bumfuck nowhere, let's go to bumfuck New Hampshire with Mark and Mina. So Mina and Maria wake up in bed with Mark. So the countdown now tells us they have 89 days to wed. And the first thing Mina needs to do is call her son Clayton, because she didn't get the call last night after they got in. Of course, as we all learned last episode, he's stuck in France due to a passport issue. So she tells him that the flight was fine. Well, more than fine, because she got to fly first class. So it was pretty nice. She seemed very sad yesterday. She said he seemed very sad yesterday when she left. And he was like, well, yeah, you went to a different country. But they're very encouraging, being like, you'll get here soon, even if they don't actually know how long that's going to be. They seem to really avoid saying out loud what specifically the passport issue is. I feel like they get close to saying it and then don't. And they're like, that issue that we had. But anyway, so when they hang up, she's not sure if she's going to be able to handle all this being so far away. And she asks even about like, well, this is too much stress. Can we move the wedding date? And he's like, no, it's 90 days. We have to do it in 90 days or you have to leave. But also if she has to go back to Clayton, then she can't come back to the US. So she kind of feels like feels like she may have made a mistake right now. But now that later on they got up, it's time for breakfast. And that's going to be a little challenging because Mark didn't seem to buy basically anything for Maria. There's not like really baby appropriate food, and most prominently, no high chair. So she doesn't have any place to sit and eat. So he said he almost bought a high chair, but he got busy. It's been 20 years since I raised a baby. You got to admit some things are going to fall through the cracks. And he's like, but I probably should have made a checklist. So then they get going to the store. They're going to have to try to find, food, appropriate food, and a high chair. This is the activities for the day.
Oh,
Neither of them were successful. So they go to the quote unquote grocery store, which is a gas station. It's a gas station convenience store, not a grocery store by anyone's stretch of any imagination.
Oh, gosh.
She's
Poor
like,
lady.
And she's like, I wanted to get some lamb and maybe like some fresh mushrooms, and even ask the person at the gas station, do you have lamb? And she's like, no. What are you talking about?
What a
no one's ever
ridiculous
asked.
ask.
Literally said no one's ever asked this before. So anyway, from there, this is the part that confused me because I looked at maps. We see them driving. Okay. Mm-hmm. He lives about an hour and a half away from any part of Massachusetts. Okay. The furniture store they go to next, which is the next thing to get the high chair, is 15 minutes from his house. Because you can tell where his house is on the map because there's the airstrip. You can find it.
Oh gosh. That's concerning.
It is like weirdly concerning. But anyway, so it's like 15 minutes. It's in basically the town that they go to, right? He did not drive into Massachusetts. And yet on the film, there's a big welcome to Massachusetts sign. Yeah. And they bring it up for laughs because she cannot pronounce Massachusetts.
Right.
She's like, Massachusetts. And he's like, Manchester? It's like anyway. So we get to this furniture store, which was very, I'll say, bear forward. Lots of bears.
Yes, very bear
everything.
forward. That's a very good description of it. Basically, there's bears on everything.
Yes, it's a bed with bears, and there's a stuffed bear on the bed, and yeah, everything's bear. They asked the man for a high chair there, and he's also like, not something anybody asked for. So nope, so not much baby furniture here. So I guess later on, they have to sit down and eat their gas station pasta and drink their gas station wine. And Maria's in a stroller to eat because they still don't have a high chair. And she's not into eating at all. So Mark takes her up to bed. And Mina thinks it's maybe Maria's not made out. She has good, nice French taste, not made out for a gas station pasta. But after Mina's in bed, it's time for champagne in plastic cups and a hot tub. So there's some light petting in the hot tub. And Mark is trying to make his sales pitch for the relaxing calm of New Hampshire. This is what we come to New Hampshire for. We're in a hot tub, and it's dark, the kind of dark scariness that scares most people. The dark seclusion, I should say, that scares most people. But it doesn't matter. So he also mentions, well, it's not only New Hampshire. We also have to go down south to see my family, like my daughter Jordan, who, as we know, has some doubts about the relationship. Mina says she doesn't have a problem with his family, but she feels like there's a competition between the two of them for his heart, let's say. Not his money, his heart. So Mark stumbles talking about Jordan's concerns. He just is like trying to explain Jordan's side of the story. And Mina's just like, nah, that makes us enemies. We're enemies now. I tried to make time for her. She even smiled next to me. Like, how dare she smiled next to me one time and now she's like has doubts about anything? What is this? She calls her a snake. And it even brings Mina to tears, and like Mark is not very good at dissuading anything she's saying. He's like, yeah, it's very much like she's a snake. She only, she's trying to get me out of the picture. And he's like, well, yeah, but you have to understand, she just wants what's best for me. And so she's like, what's best for you is that I'm gone? Is that what the implication is? He keeps digging the hole deeper and deeper and deeper. Yeah. So yeah, so he's just kind of backpedaling, trying to explain, does not do a good job. So, I mean, how bad is the not having a high chair thing? Is that something that is forgivably forgotten, or is that like, come on, man, what are you doing here?
I don't know. I think it's okay, I guess. I mean, temporarily. I mean, how long are we talking about? Because it doesn't seem like he has any clue where to actually obtain one. So if this were the case, like, how long is this going to be? Because a couple days, fine. But if this is like, oh, we have to order one from the internet and it's got to make its way over there and it's going to be at least a week, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I looked because I was looking at maps. You know how I do. There's a Target like 35 minutes away.
Yeah.
Like you can get a high chair at the Target. What are you doing? Like,
right.
But I also was kind of wondering now, I don't know if you've ever kind of seen, have you ever heard the phrase that they talk about it in Europe, in Europe, 100 miles is a long way, and in America, 100 years is old.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that kind of thing. If you're like, oh, we can go to Target and get one, honey, but it's like 35 minutes away. And she's like, 35 minutes? Are we going on vacation? Like, what is that? Like, I wouldn't travel 35 minutes for anything.
Yeah.
He's like, well, okay, the only furniture down in store is this one.
Yeah, who knows? I'm sure they'll figure it out. I feel like this is just played up drama. There's no way that he really seriously considers the gas station a viable option for groceries on a daily basis. So
Right,
I'm sure
for sure,
that's
yeah.
just happening right now. And so, just to really play it up. But Mina's gonna get her time at a real grocery store because that is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like we need something for dinner tonight. And he was like, well, I know where you can grab something. Right. And just went to the, because I'm sure he does that. I'm sure he's not above Gino's Hungry Man style. Like, whatever. I'm a single guy. This is food. It goes in the microwave. It comes out. I eat it. Came from the gas station. Win-win.
At that point, I don't understand why you just don't do some kind of fast food. Because
true.
It's same level of whatever nutrition at that point.
Right. Yeah,
So
if you're eating
well.
a Hungry Man versus a Big Mac, it's not really like, oh,
Right.
I'm watching my figure by eating the Hungry Man. No, like it's fast food. Yes.
So at that point, might as well just get something that maybe would be a little bit more enjoyable than gas station random
Right, because you can
food.
sell that as the American thing. This is America. We're going to do the American thing and get the fast food. It might be gross and greasy, but we'll go to the grocery store another day. Yeah, and you can make your lamb and mushrooms.
All right, so speaking of kind of gross, let's get our throuple out of the way. So Matt and Amadi are hanging out with their daughters because they're going to be going to Mexico for 2 weeks to see Ani. They say they want this to work for the sake of their kids.
Oh, my God.
What?
Oh, my God.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, they want to share life's burdens and, the good stuff with a third person. They are leaving their daughters with Brittany, a family friend. They're going to spend some time in Ensenada with Ani before traveling to Ani's hometown. Amani doesn't want to leave her kids, and she's feeling like a bad mom as she cries.
As she should. Yeah,
she
should
should
feel like that.
Yeah. But it's okay if she forgets about them. She can just take a look at her sleeve, which prominently features their faces. I was like, okay, that's a lot. So they both talk about, her and Matt talk about the hole in their hearts, no matter where they are, because either they're missing their kids or Ani. I wonder which one's more important. So on the road, Amani suggests that they establish boundaries with Ani and talks about her jealousy and tells Matt that she wants to know what's going on his part of the relationship with Ani because she's a little worried that Matt could leave her for Ani. They arrive in Tijuana where they are ready to celebrate Dios de los Muertos festival. Amani says that there's always an excitement to see Ani. We then get to see Ani's side, who is curvy and she's whipping her hair back and forth. And she tells us that she is from Guadalajara, but she works as a stripper in Tijuana. She is telling her friend about her throuple and how serious it is because they're looking to get divorced just to include her. We meet one of her kids, Antonella. Ani says that she's a strong mom because she dances from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and it's just really hard work and very tiring. She tells us that she got pregnant at 16, but then she was abandoned by the father, which is why she started working as a stripper. She says that couples come to her work and she was, she's been attracted to them, but she met Matt and Amani and she was attracted to both of them and they accept her and her children and they have always stuck around. This is Ani's first throuple, and she tells us that Matt and Amani have been living this way for 10 years, so she's worried that they will eventually leave her. Okay, so I feel like their story is not super consistent.
Sure.
For one, I don't know if I really noticed this before, but it looks like Amani and Matt's age difference is like 7 years. But they kind of made it sound like they met while they were both in college. Now, I get that, you get transfer students. So is it possible that, two students 7 years apart are in college? Sure. But they've also been living like this throuple life for the last 10 years. Like, we've gotten zero history of their relationships from, having a third. And they make it seem like this is the one. Like, we've never met anyone like Ani and all this other. It's just starting to feel like bullshit.
The whole thing sounds very much like bullshit. Like, and I had kind of assumed when they had the 7-year age gap was like in college, like she was undergrad and he was a grad student or something, right? Like that kind of.
You would think he'd be making more money then.
Yeah, well, it depends on what he was a grad student in. I knew a lot of broke grad. I knew a whole lot of broke grad students, but like, yeah, it just none of this makes sense. It doesn't. They're not convincing. I understand that there's people who have this lifestyle or whatever and this polyamory and they make it work. These people are not convincing me that they actually believe anything they say.
Right.
It's just, and I don't know specifically what it is that isn't convincing, besides the fact they just come off super fake about everything. Like,
well, the fact that they've kind of played this off like it's a matter of life and death of their family. We hope this works out for the sake of our kids. It's like, why?
Yeah, there's no, and that's the thing too, is like, I'm looking at this and being like, wow, if this is something that's really important to you, right? I can see being like, we're willing to do something non-traditional because that's how important it is for us. But we understand this is going to be a burden for our kids. Like, we have to understand that this is going to make your kids' lives harder, right? To have two moms and a dad at home that are all like that. That's tough on your kids. Like, that's hard to understand. They don't have peers with it. They're going to have to explain it to other people. And the fact that they're saying that this is necessary for our family's happiness is kind of wild when you think of it that way.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Especially if this means having to leave your children for 2 weeks.
Right.
Like that just, and also kind of to your point, because you had mentioned this the last time we actually saw them, the fact that you can drive to Tijuana, right? So they drove to Tijuana, was where she works. So why are you taking 2 weeks off to go see her? It seems like this could be like we see her every other weekend or something like that. Probably even more frequently if it's only like an hour or so away.
Yeah. And yeah, so we have to do this. And we're not even meeting her in Tijuana this time. We're going to, we're going down to Ensenada and then we're going to Guadalajara. Right. Yeah. And so this is clearly I've never seen we've never had anything that was this clearly a setup for a show. Like, this is a show driven trip. This is a show driven thing. And they're trying to make it make sense outside of the context of, we wanted to have this cool TV show. We wanted to have this TV show where we're having our third relationship and going to meet her family and all this other stuff. Because it doesn't make sense outside of that. It just, none of it adds up. And like and even when, I don't know if they're just reenacting or they're bad actors or whatever, like her crying in the car seems really fake. I just feel like a bad mom. It's like crocodile tears and stuff. It just,
well, I mean, I will give it to her that it's probably the Botox that makes it seem extra fake. That could genuinely be how she cries.
How she cries now? Yes.
Right.
Okay. Fair enough. That seems, that could possibly be it. But yeah, it's just, I don't know where we like go with this because you're right too. And they were like, oh, we have met other people. So like, this just seems like it's a couple that's been okay swinging or wife sharing or doing whatever they want to do before for however long they've been doing it. And now they're just like, well, let's leverage this into a TV show. Which one will work? Okay, this one. Yeah. Right. And it's also just not to pull it back. Nobody's engaged now. There's no K1. Like what is going on here?
I don't know. Yeah, they should not be on this show. But at the same time, I can see how they don't really fit in any other 90-day, show spinoff mold.
I mean, this feels like a before the 90 days, right? We're going to get divorced. We're going to go down to Mexico, meet her family, see if this is going to be able to work because it's really important for our family to work. And like, I don't know. It just, I
really,
Go ahead.
they should be on Love in Paradise.
Love in Paradise,
right?
yeah.
Because Love in Paradise, it's a fucking free-for-all on that show. It's
Yes.
like you've got various levels of commitment on that show. And so that is really where they belonged. But I think they wanted more of a, I don't know, maybe they wanted a mainstream throuple on Before the 90 Days. It just seemed, or not before, this version of 90 Days. They wanted on something that's not just randomly streaming on Max where no one sees it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that seems very, I don't know. I was glad when they started having more gay couples on, right? And then they started having trans people on. And that to me is real. And I'm not saying polyamory isn't real. I'm saying these people's polyamory isn't real. Right. and so it doesn't really, if you want to actually expand and kind of be open to the idea of polyamory being an acceptable thing, this is not the crew to do it.
Right. And I think part of also the problem with bringing polyamory onto any of these shows is the fraud, because you have to legit fraud the U.S. immigration to actually make this work. And so that also in itself just feels like this is not what you want to be highlighting as part of your relationship, because you're basically saying there's a portion of this that's fraud, either the portion that I'm applying with or the part that I'm showing the show.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Somebody's got to be frauding somebody, which seems wild to be filming a show of your fraud and then being like, oh, by the way, yes.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So two other people who are very fake, Shekinah and Sarper. All right, so we see Shekinah and Sarper at a pool where they're sunscreening up and meeting with his family. So he hops in the pool with his niece, and Shekinah then toasts their good luck with it and talks to his sister. The sister says that the family doesn't seem totally okay with him going to the U.S. alone. Like, what happens if they get in a fight and she kicks him out? Like, where's he going to go? He doesn't hear he has family and support. And she kind of doesn't even dispute the premise. She was like, okay, well, that's definitely going to happen. And when that does happen, like, you can just go over to my friend's house. And she's like, that's not good enough. Like, what? Wild. So the impression that the family is getting in this is that Shekinah thinks that Sarper is just kind of coming to visit her house rather than them building and making a home together. Like, he's going to live at iHouse. Another issue is that there's like a side of Sarper that doesn't handle it really well when he's not in control. He's not in the driver's seat. And of course, in the US where he can't even work, he's not going to be in control and he's not going to be in the driver's seat. So she thinks he might just intentionally start to sabotage things.
Oh, gosh.
The next morning, it's time to say goodbye to the family at the summer cottage on their way back to Istanbul. And as they leave, they reiterate the concerns that basically everybody has on this show. I'm giving up everything. What happens if I get there and it doesn't work? Right. In the car, he says the visit kind of left him feeling confused. But she thinks, Shekinah this part, thinks that just everybody was being overly dramatic. Like, you know, what are they even saying? Oh, you're not losing their son. You're going to be able to come back. It'll be fine. Everybody's like taking this to the next level. I couldn't focus, though, because her seatbelt wasn't remotely in the right place. It was driving me insane. It was like just kind of just going over her belly button. But anyway, they get back to the apartment. And which she is still 3 seasons deep or whatever, just shitting on this apartment nonstop. Just gets her. He's like, home sweet home. She's like, it's not sweet. It sucks. Like, okay. He's been there for 13 years, though, and he has a lot of sentimental feelings about the apartment and how many women he banged in said apartment. So all of a sudden, then, it's departure day, and they're packing up all their bags, half of which are Shekinah's. He's like, I packed up literally everything I have, and you still have more stuff here than me. So before they leave, Shekinah wants to make sure that things with her daughter Sophie, like literally they're ready to walk out the door. Like he is putting on his sunglasses, and she's like, well, I just want to make sure that, you know, you're going to get along better with my daughter than when my sister Shariah visited. This is from a couple seasons ago. And we showed a flashback of that. And let's just say that Shariah and Sarper did not get along remotely. They both hated each other's guts pretty much. So So she says, "Oh, I'm not going to marry you if my daughter doesn't like you. So you have to really be on your best behavior and try your best." And he just takes that as a threat and is more like, "Are you fucking kidding me right now? Like, you're threatening me as we're literally leaving the house? Like, what do you want me to do? You think I'm going to go there and just be an asshole for no reason?" He says, "Okay, I might do that, but that's just me. I'm an asshole, but I'm cute." She's like, just be cute. He's like, "That's who I am. You can't change it." So he really doesn't want his future to hang on the whims of a teenager, which I can relate to.
Yeah.
And then when they leave the apartment, his parents meet them downstairs and they're driving to the airport. And they actually find out on the way to the airport, they're like going to LA. That's going to be the farthest Sarper has ever traveled before. And he's going to live there. So they get dropped off and then they're on their way. So we got a little bit more about like the history here, right? Is the two histories of Sarper and Shekinah's sister do not get along. And she hates this apartment and wanted him to move out of it like 4 years ago.
I feel like this isn't new news, right? Because him
it's
meeting
definitely
the sister was something that we saw on, I think, the first season.
I think it was the first season.
Saw them on. And it also doesn't surprise me that she wants him to give up this apartment because, as he says, he's bedded like 1,000+ women there. Thousands of women,
yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me at all that she wants him to just get rid of this. And it doesn't surprise me that they, have the sister drama. What kind of surprises me is that, they're on this season and that it's almost like we're pretending from an audience point of view that we've never seen them before.
Yeah, that's always a issue we have with the people that were on a different. Well, I guess 90 Day Fiancé, they're always on a different version, but not on the Sunday show. Like, I definitely think they understand that people watch the Sunday show and they don't necessarily watch the Monday show. So this might be a new couple for a significant part of the audience.
Right. And so it's just, it's very weird, but, it's like, this is all old news, which to some extent just makes it really boring, I guess, because you're just like, oh, okay. We already know this. We've already seen the drama with her sister. I don't really know what I'm more interested in. I don't really give a crap about, what the sister thinks, because obviously Shekinah doesn't. But it is interesting to hear that basically Shekinah's daughter is being influenced by her aunt, essentially. And it'll be interesting to see really, truly, if her daughter gives Sarper a fair shot and if it really matters. Because how many times have we heard, if my child does not approve, then there's no way. Because otherwise you sound like a shit parent, right?
Right.
But how many times have we seen the child not approve and, oh, well, you'll just have to learn to love them, and it doesn't matter in the end.
You just don't see what I see, and they do it anyway. Yes.
Yeah, so, I guess we'll see on whatever's happening there.
Yeah, I mean, but it's one of those things that's funny because it's really hard to be like, my child is the most important thing and I would never abandon them. But it's like, but you fuck off the turkey like half the year. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's move on to Greg and Joan. So Greg is making a wrap while his mother, Lucille, is trying to micromanage his cooking. Joan is supposed to be arriving later this day, and Greg's mom suggests that Joan stay in another room, again, because she's already suggested this. She doesn't want to hear anything sexual coming from their room. Greg refuses and says that it's going to be awkward, but they're going to have to make the best of it. His mom hopes that she doesn't feel like a third wheel, and Greg will appreciate her no matter what. Greg has made a loaf of sourdough with Joan's name on it, and he plans on holding it up instead of a poster. Greg leaves to pick up Joan from the airport. He's waiting for her at the airport, holding up the loaf of bread, and he sees Joan walk out with all her luggage, and they hug and kiss when they see each other. She likes the loaf of bread, although she looks unsure of what to do with it other than just look at it. So she says she's excited to be there. Greg shows her the other stuff he made for her, which includes the wrap and some gingerbread cookies, and Joan notes that Greg is looking good and has lost more weight than when she saw him last. Greg worries that not having their own place will disappoint Joan. Joan is taking everything in on the drive, saying just everything looks so new. She's excited and nervous to meet Greg's mom. He tells her that his mom has concerns about hearing them having sex, and Joan is confused and concerned that Greg talked to his mom about intimacy at all. Greg floats the idea of sleeping in a separate room, and Joan says no. Greg suggests that they compromise by keeping the door open during the day and only closing the door when they go to sleep. Joan says the situation makes her sad and she cries a little. Joan says that she sacrifices a lot to be there because in Uganda she had a job and she had a degree, and in the US she claims that she's nobody. Joan is sad to have to live with Greg's mom. Greg didn't expect this reaction, which makes him feel pretty bad. Back at home, Lucille warmly greets Joan, but she notes that Joan is shy. She was hoping to set some ground rules over dinner, but Joan really doesn't want dinner. She's not very hungry and she's just really tired. Greg already apologizes for the cleanliness of the room. Joan asks why there's a calendar from 2017 hung up on the wall, and Greg says it's because he likes the picture of the dog on it. Greg says his mom helped him clean his room. Joan doesn't think the dog, Daisy, the family dog, should be on the bed, so she's trying to get the dog off. Joan says that in Uganda, dogs belong outside. Joan says that she will need more time to feel comfortable in this house. When Greg tells his mom about Joan's reluctance for the dog being in the bed, Lucille says that Joan needs to get used to it. Greg says that Joan is afraid of the dark and she has feelings about not sharing the same room. Greg starts to cry in front of his mom because he's feeling inadequate in what he's providing. Greg then floats the idea of the open door compromise, and Greg assures her that he will respect her 100%. Lucille has never seen Greg break down like that before. So, what the hell kind of compromise is this? An open door policy?
What on earth is like... I'm trying to think about what this is avoiding. So the whole thing is they wanted to avoid the sounds of sex, right? I don't want to hear you guys. That's going to happen at night most of the time, right? Like, I don't think, Joan being uncomfortable with him even discussing the idea that they even have sex together, right? Her being uncomfortable with that isn't going to be like, all right, mom, we're just going to go back to my room and bang now. Like, they're not going to do that. That's not going to happen anyway. So why an open door policy when you're not even in the room? Like, what is going on here? Yeah. Oh, see, Mom, we're definitely not having sex during the day. You're just walking about. It's like, okay, thanks for that. But yes, like, what the heck kind of compromise is that? Yeah, I mean, that is one of the perks of having your own place, is that is always an option. But I feel like after a little bit of time, that stops being something that you do very often, where you're just like in the middle of a day. It's usually at the beginning or end of the day, right? And it's like, but yeah, the idea of it's like, don't worry, Mom, it's 2 p.m. and I'm at work, but you can be rest assured that we are not having sex right now. Well, let's be real here. Neither of them are working, he doesn't work. So, okay. I mean, I guess that might be fair. We might do it. We might do it at 2 p.m. then. Sure. Oh gosh. Yeah, I understand and I appreciate that Greg is trying to come up with a compromise, but there really is no quote compromise. I think really thinking about end goal is Lucille just doesn't want to hear them. And quite honestly, given how embarrassed Joan was that Greg was, she is not porn star moaning, like we don't need to she's worry gonna want to not that. Be heard either. Yeah, exactly. She is going to be as silent as a mouse because heaven forbid Mom hear anything, right? So Mom doesn't even need to say anything and Joan's already feeling that way. So I feel like this is a non-issue, but Lucille doesn't know that Joan is embarrassed or feels that way. So I mean, I can understand why it is a concern, but it's not a realistic concern given what we know about Joan. So I kind of feel like Greg could just be like, hey, listen, if you ever hear us, that will separate rooms.
to prove a point. Like, you will never hear us. So you don't need to worry about this happening. And if you do, then we will sleep in separate rooms.
It's also a weird, I don't know. It just is a weird demand to me because at the end of the day, I get that you don't want to hear it, but he's marrying this woman and 90 days are going to be husband and wife. That's what husbands and wives do. Like, even the most conservative of Christian religious people are like, oh no, once you're married, yeah. But even like how many of the very conservative Muslim men you've seen on here, but they're like, no, but once we got married, no, we're good. Like we're ready to roll. And that's fine. But because I don't know, I'm just one of those things that I just think about my own life, right? And I didn't ever have a live-in girlfriend, fiance, wife when I lived with my parents. But we did like take vacations with my parents where everybody was sleeping in their own rooms in their own beds. Like, and nobody had to say like, just so you guys know, I don't want to hear you banging. Yeah. I don't want my parents hearing me banging either. Like, nobody wants that. Why would that be? Why is that something you have to concern? Like, I don't want her shitting in the middle of the floor. And it's like, I don't think you have to worry about that, Mom. She doesn't want to shit in the middle of the floor. Like,
nobody wants that. It's
nobody
fine.
wants that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't really know what Lucille's kind of end game or what she really wants out of this other than, I don't know, being able to not be traumatized, I guess. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, it just seems like the whole thing is just, Joan just wants to get the hell out of there, which I get, right? And Lucille is just like, but I could also see Lucille when they do get their own place, just like being there all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And so just get her own place and get him out of there.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. All right. So we saw everyone. No, everyone
but Jessica and Juan.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah. Jessica and Juan. I feel like.
Yeah. Juan's still trying to struggle without his door. So.
Oh gosh, I know, right? Okay. So out of the group you saw this week, who would you say is your student of the week?
I feel like the only couple I liked that we saw where I liked both people was Stevie and Maddie, and I gave it to Maddie last time, so I'll give it to Stevie this time. Like, she was fine and good and helpful. And like, I also do appreciate how she had a concern that she immediately and gently communicated with her partner.
Sure.
And didn't just hold it. Right? She was like, hey, last night I know you were stressed and everything. You said this thing. Like, what's up with that? Right?
Yeah.
For Stevie, for good communication.
Right. I actually went with Joan just because she didn't do anything bad.
She didn't do anything bad. Yeah.
Yeah, she entertained the idea that Greg was saying, but was firm in her reasoning and and also I felt a little empathy for Joan a little bit because she really touched on something that I think a lot of people, the foreign fiancés, go through, whether it's to the same level as Joan or articulated in the same way. But you go from having things in your home country to coming here and being, like, as she said, a nobody, right? And not to say that she's a nobody, but I think, the sentiment behind that has to do with the fact that she really has nothing. She hasn't a name for herself. She doesn't have a career for herself. And I really feel for the sacrifices she made to be here.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. It's like they said with Sarper. It's like she gets here and it's like she's sitting on somebody else's couch and laying in somebody else's bed and washing it up at somebody else's sink. That's tough. None of it is yours.
Yeah. Okay, who is your dunce then?
My dunce, I said Gregory. Like, okay. I feel like of the two men that did not properly prepare for their significant other's arrival, being Mark and Gregory, I say Gregory was a little bit worse with his, I don't know, I feel like he kind of hit her with a bunch of stuff he didn't need to hit her with right away.
Yeah, and his dumb compromise, right?
And came up with a very dumb compromise, but not with the dog. The dog's going to be in the bed, and you could do nothing about that.
Oh, gosh. Well, she doesn't know that yet, right?
And she doesn't even know that yet. Yeah.
And then that was the weird part to me is like, Lucille, who are you dictating is in someone else's bed? Well, she better get used to it. It's going to be, Daisy's going to be sleeping in her bed. It's like, why? If you really think Daisy needs to be sleeping in a bed, have her sleep in your bed.
Yeah, and I understand where that comes from because I have cats, right? And they're a little bit different than dogs. But there's no telling a cat where it can be and where it can't be. Like, what, I got to wake up 4 times a night and take it off the bed? Oh, I could give up. Like, here it is.
Yeah. I actually went with Mark, mostly because I just felt that Mark, if it was for show or for whatever, it's like, Mark, come on. Like, this is your community. By the way, you're trying to sell your community to your fiance. Taking her to the gas station for food and to some random bear country for like, a high chair. This is not selling her on New Hampshire.
Literally the first thing he showed her about his town was a gas station store.
Right. It's like ridiculous. Okay, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay. What about your life lesson?
So mine kind of goes to both of them, and we hit them with this, and it comes up somewhat often. You got to let jet-lagged people sleep their jet lag off before you start to try to have serious conversation with them. Like, I feel like that's why Joan burst into tears. It wasn't because she was actually that upset and cried. She was fucking tired. And you're telling me all this shit that I didn't want to hear as soon as I got off the goddamn. I'm not even home yet. I'm so tired. Like, and now you're telling me I have to sleep with the door open? What is this? Stop it.
Yeah. I think this might be a bit of a controversial life lesson, but I really think that if you're a parent, that you shouldn't be just like lounging in your lingerie in front of your kids. And I don't know, maybe Mina doesn't consider that lingerie. Like maybe she just considers nightwear. But to me, it just seems like weird. Like she basically was wearing a bra when she was on a video call with her son. And it just seems like, I don't know. Is it really that difficult to cover up?
That seems very French to me. Like,
oh, yeah. I was going to say, that's why it's like, I don't know. Maybe this is a controversial life lesson. Maybe it's like a cultural thing. But I don't know. It just seems to me like, if you're going to be
a bathrobe or something first? Yeah.
Or something.
Well, I mean, she was in that bra sleeping in the bed with her other kid.
Yeah. But, oh, my goodness. So. Yeah. Yes, it's probably a very French thing. But, just cover up. I mean, okay, to me, would you go out in public like that? Okay, so if you think like going out in public like that seems like immodest, then probably shouldn't be like that in front of your kids. But, okay, on the other hand, culturally, if you would go out in public like that, then, okay, forget what I have to say. Kids
are also weirdly difficult because, like, there's a weird transitional time that happens when you go at that. Because when your kids are birth babies, who gives a whatever? They're babies. They don't know anything. Like I have to put the baby down before I hop in the shower. Like you're naked in front of the baby sometimes, right? It's not like, and of course you don't stay that way for very long when they can develop memories and things. But like, and then it's kind of like, they see you in all kinds of different weird ways getting out of bed and getting out of a shower but it's like a frog in the boiling water thing. It's gradual. Right. It's always been that way. Right. And so I can see not caring as much for those kind of things because you're like, well, yeah, this has been my whole life with this person. I've been dressing like this.
Well, I was going to say, and to that point, I did not grow up in a naked house. I have a couple friends who did grow up in a naked house. And so it is kind of interesting to see like how comfortable they are, with nudity in front of strangers, other family members, etc. But I am not that way at all. So.
Oh, no, it's fine. I'm much more comfortable with nudity in front of strangers than I am in front of like my family. For sure. like it's a locker room or something. Oh yeah. We just got out of the pool. We're at the Korean spa. Yeah. I don't care. Whatever.
Oh my gosh. No, I am not like that at all. I think that's where this is coming from. So maybe it isn't a life lesson at all. Maybe it's more of an observation. Observation of my perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Fair enough for this week. Okay. So we will be back again this time next week.
Yep. We'll see everybody then.
So until then.
Right. Okay.
Bye.